Rights advocate Martha Karua has been a formidable voice in East African politics. Known in Kenya as Kenya's Iron Lady, Karua has consistently championed democracy, the rule of law, and women's rights, and this is both in and beyond her country's borders. A former Minister of Justice and an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, she made history as the first woman to run on a major party presidential ticket when she joined Raila Odinga as his running mate in Kenya's 2022 general elections. And earlier this year, she launched the People's Liberation Party, signalling a new phase in her political journey, one centered on social justice and grassroots transformation. But her advocacy has also brought challenges. Last month, Karua was detained and deported from Tanzania, where she had gone to support opposition leader Tundu Lissu in court. She also is representing Ugandan opposition figure Dr. Kizza Besigye, who was reportedly abducted in Kenya and returned to Uganda to face treason charges. Well, today, Martha Karua joins us to reflect on her political mission, her ongoing regional advocacy, and the social-political currents that are shaping East Africa today. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. It really is an honor for us to have you on our program. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Ms. Karua, let's start with what's happening in your country right now. And I wonder what's played out in police custody, the death of Albert Ojwang, and the protests that followed, and what looks like initially a police reaction, which looks like made up story, a cover-up. And then backtracking. What does this tell us about the political climate in your country at this time?
I would say it's volatile, and that people are angry, and justifiably so. Police killings are on the rise, and this is yet another of extrajudicial killing by the police. This young man was fetched from his home. His father and family members were present. But as you know, people have no power to resist arrest by the police. So they hoped that because he has been taken in their presence, he would be safe. The next day he was dead. Is part of systemic torture of critics. A senior police officer was unhappy with posts the deceased had made on social media. And because we are told it's always good to give a name, the deceased Albert Ojwang had made on social media. And this just goes to show you that previously we've had abductions, murder, torture, disappearances of young people who criticize the regime of William Ruto, and especially William Ruto himself. You can see now it has morphed to senior police officers protecting themselves from any critical comment by going out, arresting, and executing their critics. So it's really a terrible time, and the youth of this country are fighting back. The opposition is fighting back, and we are saying no to extrajudicial killings. That is the mood in the country, despite very heavy police presence in the central business district yesterday, which was meant to prevent people from entering, protesters from entering the Nairobi Central Business District, but a lot of youth filtered in, and by 11, there was sizable presence. This is showing that people are not taking it lying down. Even under threat of death and torture, people are saying no to violation of their rights.
When did Kenya become this country? For a long time, as outsiders looking in, we always looked to Kenya and we thought it was, you know, one of the flagship countries on the continent in terms of democracy, freedom of expression. Were there things bubbling under that we were not seeing, or what has happened over time that we're at this point where, as you say, this kind of repression begins from the highest office?
I think this has been simmering, but its worst has come under the leadership of Dr. William Ruto. The constitution has all but been suspended without declaring so, because the rule of law has broken down, is no longer followed. He himself has openly threatened people that they can even be transported to heaven, which is a clear threat to being killed. And it is happening, it continues to happen. Kenyans are very vocal, were vocal even the days the constitution had not been, overhauled to have a foundation of rights the way it has now. And after the promulgation of the constitution in 2010, Kenyans have remained vocal irrespective of the circumstances. And I do hope that we continue this way to rid ourselves of autocratic rule and to safeguard, defend our constitution, because it's the only thing that stands between us and total autocracy.
I'm going to come back to Kenya and your journey a little bit more in a short while. But while we're talking about this malaise of the shrinking democratic space, I want to talk about the region now. You were recently deported from Tanzania whilst attending a court session for opposition figure Tundu Lissu. What exactly happened there, and what does this incident tell us about the space in Tanzania and the region in general?
Like most East Africans, I hold an East African passport, which has the name Kenya, but it's an East African passport. As a citizen of East Africa, I am entitled to enter any of the East African countries freely. No visa is required, and unless if I've committed an offense or there are legal reasons for denying me entry, as a citizen of East Africa, I ought to enter without let or hindrance. This instance, we were a large group. We had gone to observe the case of Tundu Lissu. I was there to observe the same case on 24th of April, and I had entered without let or hindrance. But maybe because I held a press conference after the court condemning what the repression that is occurring in Tanzania, they must have flagged off my passport. Because this time when we arrived, the immigration officer asked me what I was entering to do. And I reminded him that as an East African, I didn't need a reason, and that I was a guest of the East African Law Society, of which I'm a member. And he said he's going to consult his superiors. So obviously there was a red flag on my entry, on my name. So we were eventually denied entry, not just myself, but two of the colleagues accompanying me who were on different queues than me, and we were detained for 6 hours before being deported to Kenya. I do sincerely believe that during that long wait, the Tanzanian government must have gotten in touch with Kenyan government, remembering that Dr. William Ruto is now the current chair of the East Africa community. There is no way Tanzania was going to deport high-profile Kenyans without talking to Kenya. So they must have given a nod for us to be deported. Just like in Kenya, in Tanzania, criminal trials are public and anybody can attend. The trial of Tundu Lissu, the key challenger to President Suluhu in the October elections this year, is a public trial. Treason is a criminal offense. Therefore, anybody could have gone to court. But Tanzania has been preventing people from accessing court. On the 24th, when I attended, there was a big battle outside the court, police brutalizing anybody attempting to get access to the court. People were injured. One person died. Chadema officials, that is the party of Tundu Lissu, his deputy, his secretary general, and many others were all arrested and detained until later that night. On this particular day, they denied us and access and returned us to Kenya. The case was on the Monday the 19th. And we still saw video clips of police pushing people, roughing them up, beating them up, and denying them access to the court. So it is something that Tanzania is doing deliberately. The statement by President Suluhu Samia, after we were deported at 5 p.m. that Sunday the 18th, that there were activists from other countries. He didn't name Kenya, but he alluded that we had messed up our country and now we were going to mess up Tanzania, and he was not going to allow, which is a baseless allegation. They did not accuse us of anything. They just deported us. This does not augur well for the East African community, which is a community for the people of East Africa, not for the leadership. But that now they are using it to oppress not just their nationals, but East Africa nationals. And that is what happened to us. It's something we must resist. We must resist the encroachment on our civil liberties within the Jumuiya. And that is why we found it necessary to go and stand in solidarity with Tundu Lissu. That is why I'm in Uganda defending Kizza Besigye. We need to stand with in solidarity with one another. And I'm hoping that SADC, because Tanzania is not just a member of the Jumuiya, it's also a member of SADC, that SADC will also do its duty by ensuring that Tanzania abides by the foundational principles of SADC, which are similar to those of East Africa, one of them being adherence to the rule of law, democracy, and human rights.
You mentioned Dr. Kizza Besigye. Could he have been abducted, removed from Kenya without the cooperation of senior figures in Kenyan government?
Absolutely not. In the case of Dr. Kizza Besigye, I think the top leadership of Kenya and top leadership of of Uganda communicated. There is no way Ugandan army officers can come to arrest somebody on Kenyan soil. It's a violation of territorial integrity. Kenya facilitated that. And Besigye and his friend Lutare were arrested by 8 officers. 4 of them turned out to be Ugandans, who then transported them back by road all the way up to Kampala. It therefore means that the other 4 were the Kenyan collaborators. So we are seeing a pattern where the 3 states in East Africa, the 3 original states of East Africa, because now we are joined by many others, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, have gone rogue and are collaborating to violate the rule of law, violate the rights of their citizens, and violate their civil liberties. Kenyan law, like Ugandan law, upholds due process. Besigye ought not to have been removed from Kenya without being presented to the Kenyan courts for them to authorize his removal and for him to have a chance to fight back. So this is the state violating, Kenya violating its own laws, and together with Uganda, violating international law. At the border, Besigye tells me that no document was stamped to show he and Rutale have left Kenya. They just left without any documentation, which is again trafficking in people. If it had not leaked that he was in Kampala, who knows, he could have been disappeared permanently. So we really are facing danger from the leadership in East Africa, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. And I must mention that Burundi is no better. They are facing election. There's a crackdown on opposition parties. We have seen a pattern where the states are trying to prop up their own desired opposition parties and fighting the opposition parties identified as a threat to them. That has happened in Burundi. It's happening in Kenya, in Tanzania, and in Uganda. And really, the Africa, AU, and its organs that they have, like the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, ought to be very concerned about what is happening. There cannot be peace without justice. There cannot be peace without respect for human rights. There cannot be peace when states turn rogue, violate, and even execute their own nationals.
As a lawyer, where is the East African Court of Justice in all of this?
Well, we have, in our case, filed a case 2 days ago in the East African Court against the actions of deporting us arbitrarily and denying us entry into Tanzania. Lawyers are working to also file a case of torture and detention for Boniface Mwangi, a Kenyan activist, and Agatha Atuhaire, a Ugandan activist, who were not only detained, but were treated to inhuman and degrading treatment. They were tortured for days in Tanzania before finally being dumped at their respective countries' borders.
All right, let's go to your journey now. You ran as a deputy presidential candidate in 2022 alongside Raila Odinga. You've now formed
correct.
People's Liberation Party. Tell us about the formation of this party, establishing it, and what's different about your mission under this hat?
Let me say that the People's Liberation Party is a rebrand of a party that existed since 2006. The party's former name was NAK Kenya. Now we are the People's Liberation Party. We have rebranded. Our mission remains the same. We are big on social justice and on rights, on governance, good governance, transparency, and accountability. We have renewed our commitment to uphold these principles and to serve the people, indeed to liberate the people from all types of oppression. And I am vying for the highest office, the presidency, under this party. And we are also collaborating with other opposition parties. We believe that in countries where there is suppression of opposition parties and civil liberties, it is necessary for the opposition to work together in order to defeat all the machinations of the oppressive regimes. But within that opposition in Kenya, it is my duty to advance my candidacy so that at the end of the day, I become that opposition candidate to liberate Kenya. And one of the things that I would do is return Kenya to the rule of law. Because without the foundation of the rule of law, it is not possible to deliver on the promises we give to the people. It is not possible to have an orderly society without abiding by the rules the country has agreed on, and that is the Constitution and the laws made under it. We believe in the People's Liberation Party that certain basic services must be provided to the people. Basic services and basic needs that support the right to life. And our Constitution in Article 43, not 33, re-emphasizes this. Therefore, we advocate for universal health care, quality universal health care for all, quality education for all, social support for vulnerable groups. We believe in supporting agriculture to enable food security. We believe in ensuring that there is the infrastructure to drive the economy. And we believe in a just economy that works for everybody, not just a few. A just economy is one that prioritizes the needs of the people. A just economy is one that keeps the taxation to where the people can afford, not an extractive regime that leaves families without the ability to put food on their table and to cater for the basic needs of the people.
Ms. Karua, putting yourself in front and in opposition, does that make you a target? Are you already preparing yourself for harassment and possibly even attacks?
It does make one a target, but I share the risk with other opposition colleagues. I have lived all my life under similar threats, except for a short period during the Kibaki era, where individuals were not targeted. Under the KANU regime of the late President Moi, we were targets as young activists. I lived through that, and as an opposition member lived under the same threat. So it is not something to worry about. We have a job to do to liberate our country, and nobody else will come here to clean this mess. It has to be us, and I step up for my country. And happily, many Kenyans have stepped up.
You've long been a vocal advocate for women's leadership. How do you assess the pace of progress in things like gender equity in governments across East Africa today?
In Uganda, they've achieved the gender quotas, and also in Tanzania. In Kenya, though our constitution decrees that we do so, we have not obeyed the constitution. But there is increased women's participation. I would like to measure women's participation not just by the numbers in parliament. It is by how society treats women. In Kenya now we are dealing with rising cases of femicide, of domestic violence, of gender-based attacks and violence on women. We cannot say we are there. We need deliberate efforts, not just laws. And we need to integrate gender relations as part of the school curricula. It is a debate that must be ongoing, and we must be very deliberate about it, so that we not only have women in positions of power and decision-making, but we start to change gender relations in society and to have a culture of mutual respect between the genders. And that is something my administration would prioritize.
And perhaps finally, I mean, you've served in nearly every branch of public life, from the courts to cabinet, politics, campaigning, human rights activism. What keeps you going despite all of these challenges, and what's the mission that remains for you paramount?
I would say that the need to get it done, This is my home. Kenya is my home. And just like in my house, if I entered to find things littered on the floor, I will not walk over them. I will pick them even as I seek to know who is responsible for the mess. So in Kenya, we are seeing mess all around us, violation of human rights, deterioration of essential services, theft and corruption. This is a mess all around us. I will not walk over the mess in my home, Kenya. I will begin to do something about it and to stand in solidarity in others so that we may be able to clear the mess. This is a calling from within me. It's also a civic duty to my country. And I think this is what we all must do, not just the civic duty to our country, but the civic duty to our region and to Africa. And we look up to all people of goodwill in Africa to show leadership so that together Africa will rise.
Advocate Martha Karua, it really has been an honor and a pleasure talking to you this morning. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and giving us some of your time.
Thank you for having me. Asante.
Asante sana. Thank you. That was Advocate Martha Karua, veteran politician, former Minister of Justice, and an unwavering advocate for democracy and the rule of law, human rights, speaking to us about the political challenges not just in her country but in the region generally across East Africa, and her continued fight for freer, fairer continent. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Nolu.